In this video, we're going to see what we do when we lose symmetry in our meshes. And that's something that'll happen just in the process of sculpting. You will at some point find that you lose your symmetry. It could be that you've turned off your X while you're zoomed in and working and you just haven't noticed, or you're posing with asymmetry on and then you turn it off, go back to symmetry mode, and you forget that you can no longer sculpt the arms in symmetrical mode, for example. So I'm going to show you a few techniques on how to restore your symmetry if you do lose it. So let's say, for example, on this particular Z tool, which has multiple subdivision levels, this is a subdivision sculpt model. So it's got a low resolution cage and then about 5 subdivision levels stacked up with detail. I'll step down here and let's say that I've turned off my X symmetry by accident while I'm zoomed in. And I'm using the move brush, and maybe I've changed the shape of the head and the ear. I'll step up a subdivision level or two here, and let's say that maybe I have change the shape of the facial features here. Maybe let's mask out that bit there and bring the cheekbone out and forward. Maybe we have changed the shape of the lips as well. Now, asymmetry is something that we want to strive for in our work, especially with creatures. But it's something that you want to have conscious control over. You don't just want to accidentally have asymmetry. So there we go. That face is definitely asymmetrical. Now, let's say I go to the gizmo tool here and turn off lock, and then I will topology mask down to the shoulder. And then let's place this rotation point here. Lock it again, and let's say that we've actually posed the character with some asymmetry. There we go. I'm going to go to the transpose rotate tool now. I'm going to draw a transpose line from the shoulder to the elbow, and we'll bend the elbow. Now, if you want to know more about transpose, take a look at the gizmo and transpose video that we made, as well as our video on posing. There we go. So here we've got a definite asymmetrical mesh. When I realize that, what I will do is I'll step down to the lowest subdivision level. I will mask the side of the model that I want to keep. Then I will go to deformation and press the Smart Resim button here, and that'll copy the masked side over to the unmasked side. It's just copying the position of each vertex. Now I'm going to step up one subdivision level with the D hotkey and press Smart Resim again. And I will repeat stepping up each subdivision level and pressing Smart Resim each time. The reason for that is if we step up to the highest subdivision level, we're forcing ZBrush to look at 1.4 million faces. However, if we start at the lowest subdivision level, it's only looking at 4,482. So that's far fewer faces, and if we work our way up level by level, we can reduce the amount of processor time that it takes ZBrush to actually execute this tool. So now we've got a symmetrical mesh. We can turn on our X symmetry and keep working. But let's say that we've got something that's deliberately been placed in an asymmetrical pose. So let's undo this and let's go back to our pose. And let's say that I want to have this arm forward. Maybe I want to mask this arm. I'm going to turn off X symmetry. Maybe I want this arm to go back. Let's draw another transpose line. And let's bring this arm back. Make sure we're on rotate. There we go. Rotate that arm back. Let's rotate this elbow. And let's rotate the whole torso. So let's draw a transpose line down the length of the body, and let's rotate the lower body like this. And let's move one leg back. Let's draw a transpose line down here, try topology masking down to the leg. And then let's move this leg back. Let's bend the ankle. And maybe let's just get the toes bent so it feels like those toes might be touching down on the ground. There we go. Now let's step up our subdivision levels. Now, when something's posed asymmetrically, you're not going to really be sculpting with symmetry turned on for very much because soft tissues move. Some compress, some muscles will activate, others will be unactivated and loose. Some muscles in the legs will be fired, some bony landmarks will be more visible than others. But it is really valuable when you are working on an asymmetrical pose to be able to go in and work on bony landmarks like the knees and elbows or the thoracic arch. So I couldn't do that right now because my symmetry won't work. But if I go to transform under Activate Symmetry and turn on Use Posable Symmetry, I've now got a posable symmetry for this model, so I can now go in here and sculpt the thoracic arch of the rib cage. I can work into the kneecaps. The kneecaps line up. They match to each other in my sculpting. The same for the bony landmarks here at the elbow. If I want to work the elbows and make sure that those match up, I can do so. So it's really nice to be able to control things like sculpting these bony landmarks in symmetry mode and knowing that they will line up to the other side of the model. And that's something that'll come in really handy when you're sculpting for 3D print. Maybe you're making a maquette. It's really nice to have that capability. So let's go back to our neutral pose and let's take a look at one more type of symmetry for this model. So let's say, for example, I have not sculpted it asymmetrically. I have just moved it off the center line. So for example, oops, let's turn asymmetry, bring the eyes forward again. There we go. Let's say right now I'm sitting at the origin of the floor plane here. Okay? I'm going to go to the gizmo, turn on all visible subtools, and I'm going to move it off the origin. Alright, so what I've done now is I've moved it away from the origin. Now if I turn on symmetry and try and sculpt, you see my dots over here. I can't sculpt symmetrically. So in that case, just come over here and turn on local symmetry, and that will start to calculate your symmetry based on the center line of this model. So as long as your topology is symmetrical, this will work. So those are some techniques for maintaining symmetry on a subdivision model like this. You're going to find this pop up pretty often. It's just part and parcel to sculpting in ZBrush. Eventually you're going to accidentally lose your symmetry. Hopefully this will smooth over that sort of panic, and now you'll understand how you can very quickly and easily get it back. So let's take a look at a different type of model and another technique for mirroring and welding a mesh to give us symmetrical form. The difference between these techniques is the one that we've looked at so far will respect subdivision levels and it will keep your topology. The next one is more for Dynamesh and those types of situations where you don't need to respect the topology. You just want to maintain a symmetrical piece. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. So here we have our Dynamesh alien bust. If we go into frame mode, you'll see that there is no ordered topology here. This is just a Dynamesh mesh. So let's say that we want to asymmetrically, or we've got this asymmetrically altered, and we want to actually mirror that change across. Now you could use the masking with Smart Resim, but that depends on how dense the mesh is. And what I want to show you is a really neat tool for mirroring and welding. This will actually chop one side off, mirror it, and then weld it together with the other side, creating a new topology. It does create a new seam line down the center, and it creates a sort of symmetrical Dynamesh, but it doesn't respect any topology. So you'd only use this on Dynameshes. You wouldn't use this on something where you wanted to maintain your topology. So I'm going to turn on the floor plane here. Now there's none of these axes are lit up, so I'm going to turn on X and light it up. So there's the X floor plane right there. If I go to the Draw menu, I can drag the slider and I can center it on the head. So if we zoom in here, that floor plane is now running straight down the center of the character. So watch this. If I now click Mirror and Weld, oops, make sure that Mirror and Weld is set to X, not Y, because that's my floor plane. Click Mirror and Weld, and it will mirror across. If we zoom in with frame mode turned on, you can see it's actually cut a new edge loop right down the center and mirrored it together. So let's try that again. We can actually use this to make some really interesting shapes. If I inflate this and it actually crosses over that center line, watch what happens when I mirror and weld. It creates another real interesting, neat shape there. I'm going to mask out the eyes so it stays looking interesting. Don't want to disturb the eyes there. There we go. Let's inflate this and mirror and weld. So it copies that across. Let's do the shoulders, the neck, mirror and weld, and it copies those shapes across. So this is just a really nice way of mirroring and welding geometry that's basically a Dynamesh or a Dynamesh style mesh, a unified skin, because it's not necessary to preserve the topology in that case, and this allows you to very quickly create some really cool new shapes that actually would be a little bit difficult to do if you were working with traditional kind of smart resim techniques. So there we have a whole new head design just from mirroring and welding. So that completes this look at restoring your symmetry. Hopefully this is helpful for you. I think it's one of the most common things that catches up beginners when they're using ZBrush is losing their symmetry and not knowing how to restore it. It can be a bit of a panic-inducing moment, and a lot of times people just backtrack and redo their work. So now you know multiple ways that you can get your symmetry back if you ever lose it. And also keep in the back of your head, whenever you're sculpting a character, near the end of your sculpting, make sure to turn off symmetry and introduce some asymmetry just to give it character and presence. So I'll see you in the next video.